1867 Sports Show coming at you for episode Chris Neal tonight. One very happy Sens fan and a slightly depressed Oilers fan on the show tonight. How you doing, big guy?
Well, considering how my day's gone today, I'll gladly rewatch that Game 7 loss over and over again. But yeah, overall, not bad, not bad.
Been a fun 24 hours for you there. The blows just keep on coming in Oilers. Well, before we get to that, because it just happened, we always obviously record these on Tuesday night, release them on Wednesday. So the score is now final. Let's start off with a positive here. Golf clap to Team Canada men's soccer first ever Copa America win 1-0 over Peru. Look at them getting it done there. That'll put a smile on your face before we do the autopsy on the Oilers season.
Yeah, and it only took Peru getting one of their better players sent off in the second half, so they were playing against 10 men. But
Hey,
nonetheless,
final score is the final score. Doesn't come with a whole description when you look at it 10 years from now. But a bit of a weird
no,
one, too, because did you see the Peru coach's comments before the game?
no.
He was essentially saying that Canada played too roughly against Argentina and that if they needed to take matters into their own hands with their fists, that they would. And oh yeah, it was a whole scene before they even blew the opening whistle tonight. So I don't know who pissed in his cornflakes this morning, but he was none too pleased heading into this match.
For a country known for the Peruvian necktie, I would kind of tread lightly whenever I'm dealing with a coach who's that surly going into a game.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good for them. This obviously bodes well for a men's program that has had its struggles over the years, right? Has largely been overshadowed by the success that the women's national team has had. And they've brought in some new blood for this tournament. So finally, starting to see some results on the international stage because, up until now, they've kind of had qualifying results, but then the World Cup rolled around and was largely uneventful for the Canadian boys there. So to see them go out there and earn a victory on the international stage there, that's always a positive thing heading into the summer.
100%. And I mean, you know, we always look at the international scope of things with kind of a grain of salt. I mean, we're obviously optimistic with the way that things are progressing, but I think we're realists in the sense that we know where Canada stands on the greater scope. But yeah, this is a good step forward. Obviously a new coach. It's a new regime, and ultimately this is kind of the time for Canada to really identify themselves as a fringe contender, right? It's not just about competing anymore, it's about contending. And when you can do things like this, as small as it may seem to some, like a first win is a first win. Like that's a big moment. So at the end of the day, if they can kind of rally and beat Chile or tie and advance to the next stage, that'll be huge momentum for them. So let's just keep the good vibes going, and let's keep advancing with Canadian soccer.
Well, keeping good vibes going, do we want to talk Sens or Oilers first here? Because I feel like your good vibes could come to a crashing end pretty quickly.
No, you know what? I've kind of accepted the loss, very
Rip the
graciously,
Band-Aid. Get
actually.
off.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, we can chat about it quickly and then get over to I think what you're kind of very itchy to talk about, which is the hometown senator squad finally doing something that you actually approve of. So let's
Not every day
let's
that happens.
yeah. So let's talk Game 7. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, you know what? It was nice to see how it started off, right? Because typically with these game sevens, when it's do or die, there's so much on the line. You can sometimes have these absolute dud first periods, right? Where the teams are just feeling themselves out and, pucks in deep and keep it to 30-second line changes and that's it. And it goes into intermission 0-0 with like 5 shots each. That definitely didn't happen last night, right? Like they came
Yeah.
out flying out of the gates, both teams. And that was great to see. I made the comment at one point that if you want to show someone who has never watched hockey before, what the sport is all about, the atmosphere that was going on there, the pace of the play, how every single shift just had that kind of absolute everything on the line kind of mentality. That's the game that you probably want to show them to develop a hockey fan for life. Was it the result that Canadian hockey fans wanted? Probably not, unless you're in Calgary, in which case you're probably indifferent. But, the drought continues. We're now 32 years into it at this point. But it's obvious in even some of the rumors that have come out today. McDavid's going to undergo surgery pretty soon. Sounds like Draisaitl had both a broken rib and another ailment on the go. So it's not untypical of this time of season where you hear the laundry list of injuries that these guys are dealing with. But I think you saw it more so in McDavid and Draisaitl as that series kind of wore on, where guess what? It wasn't either of them that were kind of creating those really high level scoring chances there, and I think they just ran out of gas at that
Yeah.
point. Florida, absolutely hats off to them. This is not trying to take anything away from what the Florida Panthers accomplished. To be able to go out there and lose in the Stanley Cup final last season and get all the way back to the mountaintop again. It's only been Crosby's Penguins and Wayne Gretzky's Oilers since the expansion era happened, where a team has lost in the Stanley Cup final and then gone back and won it the next season. So hats off to them. But yeah, tough to see as a Canadian sports fan. Again, that seems to be the MO, right? Whether it's Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, twice now, they seem to take it to game 7 and then lose in absolutely agonizing fashion.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you made some really good points there. I mean, first off, yeah, kudos to Florida. They're just such a good hockey team. They're deep, they're physical, they play the game. It's the way it's supposed to be played. And I think we mentioned on the show before. You got to feel good for a guy like Paul Maurice finally getting his chance to win a Stanley Cup after 30 years coaching in the NHL. Yeah, I mean, he's just he's a tactician. He's a classy guy, and he's great for a media quote every time he gets a chance to interview. So I mean, he's definitely
interview, post game there, both after he hoisted the cup and pre cup hoisting there too, shouting out like every small town that he's got a obscure relative that he's ever met got mentioned in those ones there.
Yeah, and as much as you don't like some of the guys on Florida, obviously Matthew Tkachuk's got his, his pundits, and he's also got the people who kind of take things away from what he does. And, you need guys like that. Obviously, he's a lightning rod, but, to see the Tkachuk family kind of embrace that moment together was really nice to see as well. So, yeah, hats off to Florida. It was nice to see an actual pulse in that arena for once. Because, again, in game 1 and 2, wouldn't have even known it was a playoff game. Yeah. And yeah, they brought it out. And just from an Oilers perspective, 100% what you had mentioned before. I think when you saw game 6 and 7, you started to see that momentum of that runaway train that Edmonton seemed to be on start to lose a lot of that steam that was powering them through. And yeah, I made the comment a few times last night. I mean, Leon Draisaitl did not look like Leon Draisaitl that entire series. He was probably, their, I want to say 10th best forward in the Stanley Cup, which, I mean, if you're going to win a long grind 7-game series against a team like Florida, you need Leon Draisaitl to perform like the Leon Draisaitl that everyone knows. Connor McDavid obviously shouldered a lot of the load in games, 3, 4, 5, and yeah, kind of paid the price for that. And now we're seeing that, yeah, he's got to have some surgery. He obviously was completely out of gas by the time the final whistle blew. But yeah, Edmonton's got nothing to hang their heads about. I mean, they put together such a magical run that gave, I think, Canadian hockey fans a lot of hope and reinvigorated the Canadian fan base. Because, I mean, yes, we've seen those commercials for Boston Pizza where everyone's coming together, regardless of the team that they cheer for, to kind of rally around a Canadian team to win the cup. But you always get the detractors, from Calgary, from Vancouver, from wherever, saying, well, we're only going to cheer for our team, and that's the enemy, we're not going to cheer for them. But I think when you looked at it as a whole, you see the impact that a Canadian team going to the Stanley Cup has on the country
Mhm.
as an entire nation. So 100% what they did was, outside of winning the Stanley Cup, was probably as good a job as you can do to reinvigorate a lot of hockey fans in this country. And yeah, I mean, everyone knows who Ullmark is. Everyone knows who Ryan McLeod is. Everyone knows who Connor Brown, used to be, and now has kind of reinserted himself on the scene. So yeah, like all the guys who were kind of like the third, fourth liners that Edmonton had. That's the part that I love about it. That they're the ones who stepped up, and for all the people saying, "Well, Edmonton only have two players. They only have McDavid and Draisaitl, and they're not going to go anywhere if they're their only two players." Guess what? The reason why they went to the game, the game 7 of the Stanley Cup was because of those third and fourth line guys. And if, again, if I was, again, a hypothetical coach in that situation, I'm looking at the impact that those guys have. I'm putting them out there way more than what they did in game 7 because, yeah, like they were the only ones that had the energy because they had the jump, they had the electricity. And, let's get another golf clap for a fan favorite of the show, Cousin Stu, for really taking back his career in that playoff.
Mhm.
Because let's be honest, if things kept going the way that they were going in the first 3 games of that Vancouver series, Stuart Skinner is probably an afterthought next year in the NHL and not even being considered for Team Canada going forward. With the way that he was able to turn things around and just maintain the level of calm that he did in all of those big moments, I think that people can genuinely say now Stuart Skinner is, a very good goaltender in the NHL. He's not elite yet, and he's still young. He's got some time, but he showed a lot of qualities that I think most people would look for in their number one goalie. So at the end of the day, I think he showed up very well against a red hot goaltender like Sergei Bobrovsky and really put himself back on the map and probably saved himself, a lot of, anguish in the offseason, not knowing if he was going to be a starter going forward. And now making himself quite a bit of money, when it comes time to renew that contract. So a lot of good stories coming out of it. Edmonton did, a fantastic job of clawing their way back, ultimately fell short. But again, Florida was just such a good team, kind of a team of destiny when you look at it that way. I mean, they had all the stars aligned for them to be, that cup winning team this year. And yeah, overall, nothing but good things to say from an Edmonton fan, just enjoying the game of hockey, again, after years and years and years of disappointment. So, yeah, like I said, you think that it was a somber, malaise type of mood in our household, but overall, it was hey, they played their asses off, and this is, not as good as winning, but they did everyone who cheered for them proud for sure.
Yeah, well, that's just it. All but one fan base is going to be disappointed with the season
Yeah,
at season's end. So there can only be one. And, I like the point too about how Stuart Skinner, especially the statistic was up there all the time in games 5, 6, and 7, what his goals against average and save percentage was. And, go look at the lone kind of loss that stands out, just happens to be in game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. And you only gave up 2 goals too. So it's not
yeah,
even like, he went out there and crapped the bed on the biggest stage here. It's like, hey, I stopped all but 2. You guys could only get me 1, right? So it really is boding well for Team Canada in terms of a position of weakness for them moving forward. I think everyone and their grandmother at this point knows Team Canada is locked and loaded on the blue line and at forward. Goaltender, that's a little bit of a question mark here heading into things like the Olympics and World Cups and Four Nations and all that we've got coming up here. Love the fact that Zach Hyman is now the active player, all-time single season postseason goal leader with 16 goals in the postseason. So gets
yeah,
past Ovi, gets past Crosby. I mean, if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, you've been watching this entire playoff run and the regular season, him going out in there and potting over 50 and just being like, we literally packed his suitcase for him. We said,
yeah.
thanks. Right. And just let him walk for nothing. So, it kind of goes to show you the type of players that you do ultimately need for these championship runs, right? And I think maybe this is the kind of the rationale that Toronto is bringing to the table in looking at possibly extending, a Max Domi or a Bertuzzi, where yeah, they didn't have the greatest season, whether it's regular season or postseason, but we saw what happened when we let that go last time here, right? Were we
Mm,
maybe not patient enough with them? And so, I think it's kind of a microcosm of where the NHL is at right now. If you've got an all-world center, just surround them with people who aren't afraid to do the dirty things in front of the net and the ugly goals and muck it up in the dangerous areas there, and you really need to just give it time to develop, right? And I think they kind
hmm
of ended that Austin Matthews, Hyman, Tavares, experiment a little bit early in Toronto. But the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on before we move on from the Oilers, obviously McDavid has 42 points, breaks Gretzky's assist record, gets named Conn Smythe, one of the only, a handful of players to ever get that done, only the second non-goalie to have that done on the losing team, and ultimately doesn't come out to accept the trophy. I mean, what are your thoughts on that as an Oilers fan? When Bettman's just I personally love seeing Bettman get embarrassed, so I'm gonna almost give him a gold star for that. But were you a little bit surprised, given how much of a consummate pro and a leader he's been, that he didn't come out and have that JS Giguère moment where he's sweaty and blood soaked and disappointed, but ultimately came out and grabbed the trophy?
No, honestly, I'm not, because I think the more important thing was, you're there for your guys at that moment. I mean, the reason they got there was because of their collective effort as a team. And I think being in the locker room saying, this is more important to me, this is more important than going out and accepting, you know, an award on enemy territory of a game that we just lost in heartbreaking fashion, you know. And let's be honest, I mean, you're sore, you're tired, you just, all you want to do is just surround yourself with people that, mean a lot to you. Not to say that that moment doesn't mean a lot, but I think going through something like that, I understand where he's coming from, to be, saying this is more important. Going back in that locker room and kind of, taking that moment all in with my guys because of the ride that we just went on. And that's the more important thing. People are going to remember, if I, kind of stood up, my teammates when they needed me as their captain, as opposed to 10 years down the road. Then I'm going to remember that Connor McDavid didn't come out to accept the Conn Smythe Award. No.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's right there where I agree with absolutely everything you say. At the end of the day, I truly don't care that he didn't come out and get the trophy and smile for the picture. From a content standpoint, though, because I have no doubt in my mind that whether it's with the Oilers or whether he's long in the tooth and it's a Ray Bork moment or whatever, Connor McDavid will win a Stanley Cup at some point in
yeah.
his career. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can almost see it, right? Like a Nike ad where, oh, here he is, watching them celebrate, and he has to come out and get the Conn Smythe and the disappointment on his face. And then, it's some sort of quirky, like, oh, upgraded my trophy or something like that, splashes across the screen, and there he is lifting the cup, right? Like, that's the only downside to it, is you kind of miss out from a marketing standpoint on that. But at the end of the day, Bettman with pie on his face and being there for your guys. I'll give a little chef kiss to that right there. And you know what? It is what it is. People pick holes in it one way or another, but he shook everyone's hand. He was the last one off the ice for the Oilers. Like you said, he left it all out there. So what more do you want from the guy at this point?
Yeah,
Mail him the trophy and he'll put it on his shelf somewhere at home.
exactly. And last thing I'll say on the thing, um, everybody keep a lookout for Dylan Holloway in the next 5 years, because I think we are starting to see a breakout star for the Edmonton Oilers. And it takes a lot to say that because of the star power that they already have. If you don't like the way that this guy plays, you don't like hockey.
Yeah.
So everybody keep an eye on for Dylan Holloway in the next 5 years, because I think he just put himself on the map as well.
Well, there you go. And golf clap to you for keeping it together there. Very, very level-headed approach to watching your beloved Oilers bow out in seven. Didn't even show up with like a black armband or anything for the
I'm wearing
episode.
black.
So.
I'm wearing black, but again, we're not gonna hold the umbrella over myself for all the rain clouds that are coming down. It's again, we're mourning, but it's also we're respectful of the journey as well.
Yeah. Well, obviously the Florida Panthers were the big winner of last night.
But
But the second biggest winner
was
of,
Kyle Skinner
of last night was your Ottawa Senators, who not only completed a trade, but because Florida won the cup, their fourth rounder in the much maligned, still not changing my stance on that, Vladimir Tarasenko trade now becomes a third rounder. So, hey, golf claps to the Ottawa Senators falling ass backwards into a better draft pick. There you go, boys. Just like you drew it up the whole time. But for those that didn't hear, Linus Ullmark coming over from the Boston Bruins in exchange for Mark Kastelik, Jonas Korpisalo with 25% of his salary retained, and 25th overall selection, which was Boston's original pick in the first place. I've got thoughts, but I'm going to cede my time to let you, as an outside observer, when you heard this trade went through, what was your knee-jerk reaction without knowing maybe too much of the behind-the-scenes
Yeah,
scuttlebutt that's been leading up to this week-long kind of will they, won't they trade?
I was shocked for two reasons. One of them, I'm shocked that Boston actually made the move in interdivision.
Mm-hmm.
But two, I'm also shocked that Ottawa actually followed through with a trade that they've been rumored to be making for a number of months now, because you're seeing a lot of the goaltenders already move to different teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone was kind of thinking, oh, here we go again. Ottawa's in that same boat of, well, they are in the running for this guy. He's gone. They're in the running for this guy. He's gone. Markstrom's for sure coming here. Oh, no, he's going to New Jersey. And then all of a sudden, you kind of get the apple of everybody's eye. Linus Ullmark, he's a Vezina Trophy winner. And who's the last Vezina Trophy winner to ever play for the Ottawa Senators, Kyle?
Would that be Dominic Hasek going
That
all the
would
way
be
back then?
that would be Dominic Hasek. And before his injury, I mean, we all saw the impact that he
Oh
had
God,
with
they're
that
going back
Ottawa.
to the Olympics soon. Oh no, this is all coming. Waves of terror coming over me
Yeah.
right now.
Let's just write a note to Team Sweden and just say that he is off limits. Give him a break. We're not open for business right now with Olympic goalies.
Yeah,
But
Michael Andlauer needs to lock him in a closet for the duration of the Winter Olympic break there and not let him leave the CTC.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's just shock that one, Boston did what they did, and two, Ottawa actually followed through on something and got a contract that I think a lot of people deemed to be untradeable off their books.
Yeah.
So let's we're giving golf claps out like Skittles today. So let's give another golf clap to Steve Stais for, pulling the wool over everyone's eyes, thinking that he wasn't going to be doing anything. And here we are right before the draft happens, and he's got his goalie lock, stock, and barrel here.
Yeah. Well, it's a fortuitous turn of events for the Ottawa Senators that I think the Markstrom deal ultimately happened, right? Because New Jersey was making absolutely no secret about the fact that they were hell-bent on acquiring another goaltender. So Ottawa obviously had also made that widely known as well, too. So you've really got two teams that are clamoring to make a genuine effort to upgrade the position. Yeah, there's other teams that are interested, but are they willing to pay the asking price? Are they super serious about it? Or is it, if the right deal comes along, we'll pick up the phone. So New Jersey essentially removing themselves from the Linus Ullmark sweepstakes here by acquiring Markstrom greatly favored the Senators in negotiations, because for those that have been kind of following the back and forth, we've heard everything from, all right, Boston wants Pinto plus Chikrin plus 7th overall. They don't want Korpisalo in any way, shape, or form. So you're going to have to pay through the teeth to get him. And then you're still going to have to look at maybe buying out Korpisalo or something. Like there have been all sorts of names linked to this. I don't think Korpisalo and Mark Kastelik came up on anyone's radars. And anyone who says, yeah, that was the trade I had from the beginning, you're lying through your teeth. Okay. There are zero receipts on the internet right now of these predictions happening until after the trade was announced. So, again, Mark Kastelik, great bottom six player. I think he's got a very bright future in the NHL, but is he ever going to go out there and score 40 goals? That would be very shocking to me. But he's going to play an immediate role on Boston, so they go out and they get a serviceable bottom six forward. Korpisalo, again, I guess 25% retained, even at that, kind of expensive for a backup goaltender. And who knows? He showed flashes of brilliance when he went out to LA. He showed flashes of brilliance when, he was in the AHL and they went to the Calder Cup and won it all. And so he's got potential, but what was it just the case of playing in front of, or I guess behind, an absolutely defensive liability of a franchise like Ottawa was? Maybe. And maybe they will, kind of fare better behind Boston, who kind of has that reputation as a stout defensive, unit out there. And maybe in a case where he's not the guy, where he will be behind Swayman, maybe he flourishes. It would
Mhm.
not be all that surprising to see a goaltender come to Ottawa, stink up the place, and go somewhere else and immediately thrive, right? Happened with Cam Talbot, happened with Philip Gustafson, happened with Joey Decord. I can keep listing them, and I've got some names that I'm going to get to in a minute here just to kind
Yeah.
of put a bow on this point. But really, the fact that you're able to move this off of your books for less than what the buyout would have cost you per year. So 25% retained. It wasn't even so much the AAV that was scary. It was the term that's still
Yeah.
left on this. So, like you were saying, there were a lot of people who thought this was kind of an albatross, untradeable contract. So, again, Boston kind of going inside its own division here, helping someone else out and kind of taking back a bad contract just to get back a late first rounder plus a bottom six forward. Like, I've been going through everything from, the Boston Bruins Reddits to Twitter to everything in between. Not a lot of people in Beantown thrilled with the return for a former Vezina winning goaltender over here.
No. And again, we talk about the Markstrom deal. I think that kind of set a precedent for what Boston was looking for in regards to a return. A good solid pick and a top prospect. Now, Kevin Ball, I think a lot of Ottawa fans will be familiar with that name as he was a star defenseman for the 67, the World Junior gold medalist. He went back to Calgary in the Markstrom deal. I think that alone is a very good return, plus the pick that they got. So, Calgary made out very well. And I think Craig Conroy has done a super job at kind of not reloading, but retooling that roster based on all the headaches that were given to him and, which he inherited. I look at what Boston did, and this kind of seemed like, you know what, we're hell bent on getting a first round pick. And I think that's where the sticking point really was. They weren't so interested in the prospect per se. It was more on the pick because maybe they really like, a good solid 25 to 30 players in this draft and they want a chance to get one of them. So I think that's why people are kind of looking at this as being strange because yes, you did it interdivision, but you also held out for less, which I think a lot of people are confused about. So yeah, I think, from what I've seen in the the Twitterverse and the Instagram, world is that Don Sweeney is not a very liked man right now in the city of Boston. And yeah, I think that this is the type of move that ultimately is boom or bust. And if you hit on that pick and Korpisalo can turn his career around, it looks great on you because maybe Ullmark wasn't going to resign there anyway. But on the flip side, if Ullmark goes to Ottawa, flourishes, re-signs there, and then ends up becoming, the goalie for the next 6-7 years and plays at that all-star caliber level, Korpisalo flames out because obviously the contract is too much for him to handle, and that first round pick doesn't turn into anything. Well, that's a lot of egg to have on your face. And this is the this is why coaches and GMs get paid what they do, because you make a move like this and it doesn't work out, you're fired.
Yeah.
So, let's see how this works out. But I mean, I think that Steve Staios really, you know, kind of got back in the good graces of the Ottawa fan base with this type of move, because if Kyle's happy with it, I think anyone is happy with it in the Ottawa Senator, fandom.
Yeah, I don't think you are going to find too many Ottawa Senators fans who are disappointed with that return whatsoever. You might find some, like you were saying, that are a little bit worried, right? We've seen it with the Alex DeBrincat trade, as far as, all right, here's a big swing at something for someone who doesn't have term left on the deal. And, oh, don't worry, we'll play so well this season that they would be stupid not to want to re-sign with us. And that goes downhill very, very quickly. So the fact that you've only got 1 year out of him to kind of impress him, so to speak, and make him want to commit long term, I can see the apprehension in terms of why Sens fans would be a little bit nervous about that. But like I was already saying, just simply getting Korpisalo off the books, and the fact that, again, Mark Castle, great face-off guy, bottom six, can kill penalties, this, that, the other, solid depth piece. But, fast forward 10 years from now, is anyone really going to be saying like, Mark Kastelik, the one that got away from Ottawa? Probably not. So I think we're comfortable in paying the price, right? We held on to the 7th overall rather than punting it in the trade. And, it ended up being the latter of Ottawa's first rounders. And the fact that you shore up a position, even if it is only for 1 year, right? And then that money comes off the books. So let's say worst case scenario happens, Ullmark walks again. Guess what? If you go on a good playoff push, which again, if this team does not make the playoffs this year, my God, I don't know what we're going to be doing here in Sensland. But if you go on a good playoff run here and you've got money to then reinforce that position, well, guess what? You can go out and make another big swing in free agency next year as well, too. But Ullmark, Vezina winning goaltenders don't grow on trees. Rarely do they ever become available, period. So if you're going to have the chance to add that and inject it into your lineup, go ahead and do it. He's 30 years old, right? And even if he goes out there and wants, 5-year contract, give it to him. But Bobrovsky right now just proved that a 35-year-old turning 36 aged goaltender can go out and absolutely guide you to a Stanley Cup championship here. So again, we're not taking on late years Dominic Hasek, where it's like, all right, if this doesn't pan out this year, he's only got a few seasons left in him, period, before he's out of the NHL. This is very much a goaltender who's still going to be around. And now it's up to that front office to surround him with enough talent to get them to the postseason and finally break this ongoing rebuild that has been happening for years and years. But the list I mentioned beforehand here, and we're going to get to it right now, there have been 48 goaltenders who have suited up for the Ottawa Senators in franchise history.
There we go.
Since Craig Anderson left in 2020, so we're talking about a 4-year period, the Ottawa Senators have seen Marcus Hogberg, Joey Decord, Matt Murray, Philip Gustafson, Cam Talbot, Levi Marilane, Kevin Mandolese, Magnus Hellberg, Dylan Ferguson, Mads Sogard, Jonas Korpisalo, and Anton Forsberg, which is 12 goalies in 4 years, which is 25% of the goalies who have ever suited up for the Ottawa Senators in franchise history. So if you're going to take a big swing, do it for the goaltender position, because it's an unpredictable position, but you're at least showing your team, your fans, the community that you are aware of the deficiencies that are plaguing this team. Because I don't care who, barring going out and trading for Connor McDavid, I would have been absolutely, the most pessimistic it could possibly be heading into the season if they were running back Forsberg and Korpisalo in nets. Didn't matter who else they added up front or on the blue line, or if they turned Chychrun into a whole bunch of nice glitzy prospects, it wouldn't have moved the needle as much as this Ullmark deal did. So you know what? A rare golf clap for the Sens front office from yours truly over here.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next topic, here's one that you can chew on for a little while before you have to make a decision on it. But if I offer Leon Draisaitl for Brady Tkachuk, Jacob Chikrin in a pick, what are your thoughts?
I'm personally saying no, just because I think that Brady really is kind of a unicorn out there in terms of what he brings to the table. It's an absolute, I mean, cliche at this point in Sens land, because we've heard it so many times that it's almost lost all meaning of the he drags people into battle with him. But it's true. Like it's there's a reason why it gets repeated is because how Brady operates out there is how the team operates, right? And Bruce Garriock just recently said that, 4 years ago, Corey Perry was apparently very close to signing in Ottawa. Could you imagine Corey Perry and Brady Tkachuk on the same line out there together? Like they would be the most insufferable line to play against. Like outside of probably what's going to happen with Team USA at the next international competition when you get both Kachucks on the same line out there and are just going to
Yeah.
like a super villain line. But really, at the end of the day, not taking anything away from Draisaitl here because he is an absolute elite top level scorer. But I think at least internally, and he's not there yet. So anyone listening, this is not a Stutzel is Draisaitl, but Tim Stützle, if he continues on the current path that he's on, right? I think he's only 22 still. I don't know if he's at his birthday yet this summer, but like very, very young man who's still learning and growing into that role. And he has already had, more than point per game seasons on under his belt. If last season was considered a down year for his career at the stage that he's at, the sky's the limit for this kid here. So I really think that they think internally that Stützle can become kind of Draisaitl 2.0, maybe not bringing kind of that physical edge as well too from time to time, because I think he's more finesse than willing to be that kind of power forward and get to the grimy areas if needed. But in terms of just sheer offensive talent, I think that they are hoping that he can kind of be that for them. And then you want to keep that Brady Tkachuk because he is, Matthew Tkachuk said it perfectly in his Stanley Cup winning speech there, where Brady's next, he's gonna get one. He's built for the playoffs. I can't wait to get him into there. So it very much is something that I don't think you could give up on it outside of maybe, you can count on one hand who you would actually trade Brady Tkachuk for. And it's certainly not some of those rumors that have come out of, the cap friendly and all of these hypothetical trade sites there where it's like, oh yeah, Brady Tkachuk is going to go to New Jersey for their sixth defenseman, a first rounder, and future considerations. Who says no? It's like,
Everybody.
we're not even picking up the phone at that. We're
Yeah.
blocking your number and banning you from ever setting foot into the nation's capital ever again. Like, he's not going anywhere, and I think he's truly is that valuable to this franchise.
Yeah. No, it's interesting because I'm just thinking about that as we're talking about obviously the Oilers and now the Senators. And yeah, like I said, I think that there's going to be some, not to say that those two are on the block, but I think there's going to be some bigger names than normal who are going to be dangled around the trade deadline, the free agency, period of the off season this year. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, an offseason like we had back when we had the Adam Larson for Taylor Hall deal and PK Subban for Shea Weber deal.
Yeah.
Those are just, some of the things that happen whenever you have some of these cap applications where teams are going to make these big swings to get to that next step.
Yeah. And that's everything I've heard too, right? Is I think there's going to be some fireworks heading into the draft now that the Stanley Cup is officially wrapped up. But loved the timing of the trade as well too, because those that are inside NHL circles were essentially told, "All right, no big deals leading up to Game 7," and Ottawa, from what I've heard, purposely put it through because Andlauer was none too pleased about the surprise first rounder being stripped of them and the Pinto situation not being disclosed to him upon purchase. So good.
Yeah.
And anything that sticks in Bettman's craw is good news by me. But what a perfect segue as far as Shea Weber for PK Subban over here, because again, some breaking news today. The 2024 Hockey Hall of Fame class was fully announced. We'll get to the Canadians in depth in a second here, but we'll do a quick golf clap to the non-Canadians who were elected in Pavel Datsyuk, Jeremy Roenick, Natalie Darwitz, and Chrissy Wendell Pohl. Quick round of applause to them. They're going to be seeing their names get added to Toronto's hallowed halls out there. But in terms of Canadian content, one player and then two builders. So we've got Colin Campbell, David Poile, and Shea Weber all getting inducted. I mean, Campbell, it feels like, you know, him, Bettman, all the kind of NHL head office lackeys are all just going to induct themselves at some point anyways. So, okay,
Yeah.
sure. You got in, right? You know, when I think of him, it's mostly, you know, the good old story of him trying to not blackmail, but dissuade John Scott for participating in the 2016 All-Star game. Like that's what I think of Campbell.
Yeah.
when that comes to mind there. But Poile is definitely deserving full marks as a builder, the winningest GM in NHL history. And
Yeah.
what he did, not only with the Nashville Predators, but with several franchises, but really what he was able to create with that expansion Predators franchise and turn them into a perennial contender cannot be overlooked. And I mean, even in their quote unquote down years, they were still frisky for, you know, a wild card spot and all of that. So like they never had a team that absolutely bottomed out, right? Like they were constantly in the mix right through the very bitter end, and he did a phenomenal job in kind of constructing that team and really establishing themselves and creating the Smashville and, you know, catfish getting thrown on the ice and everything that you kind of associate with the Predators these days.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of fitting for a guy like David Poile to get in because not a lot of people would know the name David Poile if they weren't, you know, plugged in or legit hockey fans, right? But you're 100% right. It's the winningest GM of all time. But when you think of the Nashville Predators, you have two names that they worked so well side by side with David Poile and Barry Trotz. And I don't think you could have a more well-run organization, you know, top to bottom, that was as consistent as they were from the time they came into the NHL. Like it was unheard of.
Yeah.
And
I still to this day wonder what hat size Barry Trotz wears, because I've never seen an individual with a bigger melon on them than old Trotzy.
yeah, you know, but again, like you look at those two guys, and you know, very rarely do you see a duo from a GM and a head coach work as well together as those two gentlemen did. Whether they, you know, there was turmoil behind the scenes, we'll never know. But if there was, they hit it very well, and they still came to work every day and made it work. So you look at this, the litany of draft picks, I think that David Poile hit on over the course of his career, not just with Nashville. I mean, it's unprecedented. And I think, you know, you hear a lot of stories. Obviously, people in Ottawa are familiar with Sean Simpson being on TSN 1200, worked a lot with David Poile when he was with the Washington Capitals. You know, he had a system in place with his draft picks, and essentially was, if you can hit on 2 of 7 rounds, you're good every year. And with that mentality, it kind of makes it so that way you're not putting as much pressure on yourself to really hit that home run in that first round, right? You can be more loose with trading down, with, you know, accruing more picks, with trading up and getting the player you really want, trading a pick to get an established player. And I think we've seen that, you know, overall. You know, I look at one of the best moves that David Poile ever made. It was trading Martin Erat to his former club, the Washington Capitals, for Philip Forsberg, and how that one worked out for Nashville, right?
Pretty good.
Yeah. So I mean, but you look at those types of moves, and not to mention, I mean, obviously we'll get into talking about Shea Weber and his fantastic career, but I mean, in one draft, and you know, speaking of that 2 of 7, in 2004, they got Ryan Suter, or 2003, Ryan Suter in the first round, Shea Weber in the second round. I mean, you got 2 Hall of Fame defensemen in back-to-back rounds. So That's the equivalent of hitting on all 7 picks.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you look at a simplistic formula like that, 2 out of 7, it's kind of like the baseball mentality. If you're hitting 250 or above, you're good, right? 3 out of 10 ain't bad. That's kind of what, running a professional organization is, whether it's football, hockey, baseball, whatever. If your batting average is, steady and you can consistently maintain, good solid picks, drafting, developing, and you can have that constant build, that's when you end up with 25 plus years of of excellence with an organization. So 100% David Poile deserves to have his name put in there. I think that ultimately more GMs need to take a page out of his book and not treat the job like I have to burn everything down to the ground in order for it to work again. There are ways to do it, and if you do it properly and and really understand the finer things of making those types of moves, I think you can really have a very long career and be a harmonious person with everyone that's working in the front office and coaching staff. So 100%. I'm a big fan of David Poile. I've heard a lot of great things from people, that he's also a gentleman in the hockey world, which is very rare again. So the fact that he's able to be, the success that he is, while also doing it with, in a classy manner, I mean, that's exactly what you look for with a elite level executive like that.
Yeah. And it's such a simplistic way to kind of look at it too, where when you actually just boil it down, it's like, why isn't every front office operating like this? Right? Hit on 2 of the draft picks, and probably Nashville more than any other team, at least over the last 2 decades, has adopted the mentality of you build it from the net to the blue line and then worry about the forwards. And look at the
Yeah.
success that they've had, right? When when you had Controd, I just listed off just a baker's dozen of Sens goaltenders, and meanwhile in Nashville it's literally been Thomas Vokoun, UC Saros, Pekka Rinne, and now
Decker,
Askarov is going to be their next guy. That's probably going to be the starting goaltender for Russia 4 years from now. So
yeah,
you couple that up with the Shea Webbers of the world, and then the Ryan Suiters of the world, and then acquiring PK Subban to inject a little bit of youth into the lineup after, Shea Weber was ready to kind of move on after signing that 14-year contract that he did, which, I mean, it's such a simple way of looking at it. Hit on 207, build it from the net out,
yeah,
and look at the success that they've had. But you look around at every other franchise, and it's just this almost laughable amount of fluctuation of success from year over year. Like, again, we've said it so many times. You look at the most successful football franchises, the Patriots, the Steelers, it's continuity, right? Align with the vision, build it out from there, and let the success just pile up. But when you're constantly, all right, that plan went up in flames halfway through the season, back to the drawing board, like it was with, the Dorian era and the Melnick era up here in Ottawa, it
mm-hmm.
really destabilizes everything. And now you're playing with half a deck at that point. So I think, obviously Campbell notwithstanding there, who was going to get in at some point anyways, just because of longevity and his relationship with Bettman, Poile absolutely deserving to get in, as were all the non-Canadians as well too. Shea Weber, I mean, again, like you said, a absolute staple on the blue
Yeah,
line for so many years, not just in Nashville, but represented his team at 7 All-Star games, 4-time hardest shot award winner, 4
Team
times
Canada.
on all NHL teams as well too. His
Yeah,
international success as well. And so he was someone that I always felt like would get in. I was a little shocked. Well, let's put it this way: it's the Hall of Good for hockey is really what it is. Shea Weber would not have been a first ballot Hall of Famer in baseball for sure, and I would say, based on his kind of accolades as well, probably not even in football either. But
yeah,
because hockey has kind of set the standard of who is and isn't getting in, it's almost like a lifetime achievement award at this point.
mm-hmm.
Because again, do I hate the pick? Absolutely not. But is he a locked and loaded CBC, sports had today? Slam dunk, first ballot Hall of Famer, Really? I mean, again, not taking anything away from his career, but were you of the mindset that he is absolutely a locked and loaded first time through player?
I think I'm in, the same boat as you. I didn't think he'd be a first ballot, but I definitely thought he would get in at
Mhm.
some point. Again, you look at the consistent, play over the course of his career from the time he was a rookie to the time he retired. It's really unmatched in today's NHL. You don't get big defensemen like that who can do everything. They can skate, they can hit, they can fight, they can play in the penalty kill, play in the power play. He really was a five-tool defenseman, which you don't see a lot of. You see a lot of specialists now,
Mhm.
right? And Shea Weber was really the type of player who could carry a team. You saw that for years with Nashville. And then when he went to Montreal, I mean, when they made their, random cup run, the reason, big reason why was because of Shea Weber's leadership.
Mhm.
And the reason that Carey Price looked as good as he did because, of guys like Shea Weber in front of him. So yeah, I really think that what you said is correct with the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's really become a little watered down. And, even with that, the fact that Alexander McGillney's still not in the Hall of Fame is shocking to me. I mean, the way that he kind of blazed the trail for the Russian hockey player to kind of, you know, take to the NHL and become what they've become now. It's kind of a, it's not a slap in the face, but it's really more of a shame that he's not considered to be in, considering all these other people who are getting in with lesser resumes than him. But I
Mhm.
digress. Back to Shea Weber. You know, not often do you see a guy who gets drafted one play with their team for more than a few seasons, because in today's show me now or beat it mentality, guys get traded faster than ever. He was in Nashville for a long time. Yes, he signed that offer sheet with Philadelphia, but I mean, anyone who gets offered that type of money and that type of term would be silly not to sign that. So again, you're sitting there with this big contract now, which you've earned because of your play, but you stay with the team that drafted you and developed you. Then you get moved to a team like Montreal, which I'm sure he wasn't happy about at the time because he established roots. He obviously had a long life in Nashville. Probably had a very good, personal situation, there. Then he gets moved to a different country, to a team that maybe isn't considered to be a very competitive team, and didn't come out in the media and complain. Didn't handle it like a lot of players would. He came out and just said, "This is the team I play for now. I'm going to do everything I can to make this team successful." And I think that was the reason why he got to wear the vaunted captain, sweater for Montreal in his first season. So, yeah, I mean, Shea Weber is definitely a defenseman that a lot of people can model their game after if you want to be successful, because there's not too many like him out there. Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? 100%, absolutely, yes. Should he have been a first ballot Hall of Famer given the credentials that should be in line for a full sport Hall of Fame? Probably not. But hey, let's give him a golf clap anyway, because we got to respect the career and ultimately the person that he is, and I think that speaks volumes to why he's getting in as early as he is.
Yeah. And again, this is absolutely not trying to rain on the, Shea Weber parade here in any way, shape, or form. It's more so just a referendum on the criteria that,
Yeah,
the Hall of Fame does use, because it seems like, at least in the last couple of classes, they've tried to put, I think, too many people through, where
yeah,
there's literally some years that no one gets elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's just like, nope, we're not doing it this year. We'll see if anyone new comes along next year, right? Whereas every year it seems like we're going 7, 8, 9 names deep here, and that's where you kind of run the risk of getting a watered down product, right? Again, Shea Weber, absolutely deserving. If for those that are listening, they're like, well, if you guys are saying he's deserving, like, why are you losing sleep over it? Truly not losing sleep. But
no,
it really is, kind of questioning what is Hall of Fame worthy in terms of, the minds of those that are making that selection, because Alfie took forever to get in there, right? Jeremy Roenick, this was his 10th year waiting to get in there. if you're gonna say, well, no, it comes down to, accolades and, what you did and this, that, the other. It's like, well, Weber didn't really have too many of them there. His only award in the NHL was the Mark Messier Leadership Award. 0 cups on his resume, right? But then if you're gonna go and say, well, yeah, it's accolades mean something, and he kind of proved it on the international stage. Well, why is Chris Osgood not in there, but Mike Vernon is, when Chris Osgood has more hardware and accolades and all of that than his teammate did? Like, you can't say, well, he was a systems goalie with Detroit. They both played for Detroit at one point. Like, so it's just, again, full marks to him, but you just never know what you're going to get out of the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I think that's kind of where some people have taken a little bit of umbrage with the selection process at this point.
Yeah, but nonetheless, I mean, the reason why we've got the Hockey Hall of Fame selection committee is to make these types of tough decisions. I've sat on Hall of Fame committees before. It's not an easy process. You might be banging the table on someone who makes complete sense to you to get in, and then the person sitting next to you is looking at you like you're crazy, but they're saying this is the person who needs to get in. Meanwhile, they're on the number 6 or 7 on your list. So it's really it's a difficult process, and that's the reason why getting into any Hall of Fame is such a honor, because you have to have a group of, it's like a jury. Like, you really have to win over everyone who's sitting on that panel in order for you to get in. And yeah, obviously, Shea brought enough to the table to kind of gain favor with all the the voters in the selection committee, and deservedly got into the Hall of Fame. So,
and shout out to the Utah Hockey Club for their first member in the Hockey Hall of Fame there, because they're technically still on the books for another 2 years out there, despite having I guess, in non-formally announced career-ending injury in 2021.
Yeah, and isn't Pavel Datsyuk also on that payroll as well?
I'm not sure if he still is. I mean, he was at one point. The Arizona Coyotes were the dumping ground of every single contract you could imagine. I think Chris Pronger might have been on there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, moratorium on the Arizona Coyotes there, who, yeah, not to go down a rabbit hole, but their owner has now rescinded all ties to it. He's now going to move the Tucson Roadrunners to Reno, Nevada. And yeah, so hockey in the desert is definitely dead at this point, but I digress. Well, Hockey Hall of Fame is in Toronto. And while you're there, stone's throw away, you can go and check out the beloved Blue Jays, probably for a cheaper price than they were at the beginning of the season, given their recent struggles. Entering tonight's contest, 7-game losing streak, 16 games back of the Yankees,
which they have now snapped with tonight's victory over your beloved Boston Red Sox.
I was glazing over that fact, but thank you so much for bringing that up. Let's rewind here. But, some interesting developments happened in Blue Jays land there. Let's start off with something that we actually talked about a few episodes ago when we were talking about what would you do to kind of change the outlook of this team. And what I think both of us mentioned at some point was ship some people out and then call up Orelvis Martinez, who is absolutely tearing the cover off the ball down in AAA. Well, won't be seeing him until at least September, after he was caught in violation of the PED use. I mean, the statement has been released that it was clomiphene. It's a fertility drug. He's saying it was, I'm trying to start a family, a shady Dominican Republic, kind of health unit prescribed it to me. I thought it was fine. I mean, read into that what you will at this point. But he certainly wasn't leading AAA until all of a sudden this drug seemed to enter his system. So is the chicken? Is it the egg? We're not here to litigate that, because I do not have a biochemistry degree on my resume. But obviously another huge blow, and it just seems to be par for the course for this Blue Jay season, where finally we're going to call up the top hitting prospect, and he gets exactly one major league game in his career, and he's taken now an 80-game absence.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a good career batting average right now.
Yeah, 333. Look at him go.
But yeah, I mean, if things couldn't get worse for the Blue Jays season so far, I mean, you look at all the optimism that was coming around with a guy like Orelvis Martinez saying that, you know, yes, we're in the dumps right now, but we've got Martinez and Tiedemann who are just on the cusp of coming up and being superstars in this league. Well, now you've got Martinez who has, been put on the 80 game suspended list, and Tiedemann, who every couple of weeks seems to have a little elbow issue flare up every now and again. So, you know, from bad to worse, when it rains, it pours. The Blue Jays season has not been what I think anyone was hoping for, but you and I could have called back before the season started with the way that the offseason had been progressing. Now, that being said, I mean, it's not like their season is dead by any stretch. They're still actually within striking distance of a wild card spot, which is wild to me, considering the way that things have gone. But this is the type of thing where you need these guys who you have all of your faith behind, like a Guerrero, like a Bichette. You need them to be the catalysts behind your team making these runs. How many times have you seen the Blue Jays either one, not score enough runs and they lose 2-1 or 3-2, or they're up by multiple runs and the opposition just magically happens to come back in the 8th and 9th inning? You cannot have a group of players who, if the bats are going, the pitching's not going. If the pitching's going, the bats aren't going. You can't do it. I mean, you wonder why the Yankees have made such a drastic turnaround this season. I mean, look at their lineup. Everyone in their lineup is hitting the ball. You look at their pitching staff. Everyone in their pitching staff is pitching very well without Garrett Cole, for matter. Mm-hmm. So this is why a team like Toronto is so frustrating, because they keep finding ways to lose every single night. And I think if you weren't already sick and fed up with this stuff, a couple of weeks ago, I think now you're kind of looking at it like, okay, when is enough going to be enough here?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got all of the opportunity in the world to salvage this season, but trading Cavan Biggio for, a prospect in the pitching realm is not going to ignite any flames. It might upset some people because I think Cavan Biggio was very well liked in that locker room and very well liked by the fan base. But again, that's collateral damage for getting a guy like Martinez up. And now we're back to square one of where do we go now? Mm-hmm. We've had some flashes by these prospects like Clement. We've had some flashes from guys like Davis Schneider, but there's no consistency there. Now this Spencer Horwitz guy seems like he's, going to be the next, prospect to come up and, do a little damage here and there. But that's great. You need things like that to happen. But is that making up for, George Springer? Is that making up for Justin Turner falling off of a cliff after April? Is that making up for, Bo Bichette having a career worst year so far? No, it's not going to. So, I mean, you look at where things are right now with the Blue Jays, and yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of ways to look at this season optimistically other than the surprising play of Isaiah Kiner Falefa. Mm-hmm. Like, he's honestly been their best player this season. And when you have a career utility man as your best overall player, you kind of see why the Jays are in the position that they are.
Yeah. And that's just it, right? Is there's only so many times Schneider can trot out after another loss, whether it's the bullpen imploded or the offense only scored one run on the night, if that, and constantly say, patience. Oh, it's going to turn. It's like it's a broken record at this point, right? And the fact that, who knows what's going on behind closed doors. Maybe he is flipping over garbage cans and clearing tables and screaming and trying to light a fire under them and trying to present the whole, calm and cool and collected in front of the media. But at a certain point too, the best coaches know how to strategically place a few barbs, right? To select trusted reporters that they know are going to, not misquote them and actually get it out there to try and get a rise out of their players. There's not a single championship winning coach who will sit there with a straight face and try and tell you they've never used the media to their advantage. So constantly going out there and just, reading the phone book to the press here, it's not going to cut it. And that's I think what's really really frustrating is obviously we've well chronicled the swings and misses that the Jays had in free agency. We're now coming up to the halfway point of the season. All-Star break is around the corner. Trade deadline's coming up as well too. Like, what is this team going to do? Right? Because they don't have
Mm-hmm.
internal solutions. Martinez is out for 80 games. Tiedeman's arm could fall off at any point right now. A lot of their prospects aren't quite ready to make that major league leap, even though there's been a huge trend in recent years to promote guys straight up from double A or, minimal kind of pro ball experience. But now you've got the troubling trend of some of your key players that you were hoping could kind of elevate their game and be the guy, like a Vladimir Guerrero, are now using the media the other way, where all of a sudden Vladimir Guerrero famously was taking every shot he could at the Yankees. Oh, I don't care that they won 90 games last season. They were the easiest team to play against. And oh, yeah, they've got no home field, atmosphere. And his most famous one, as far as like, I would never play for the Yankees, not even if I was dead. Right.
Yeah.
And now, so that I don't misquote him, I've got the full quote in front of us here. Sometimes one says things. Well, that's not a good start right there. Not that I'm trying to take back what I said about the Yankees, but this is a business. I sat down and I spoke with my dad and my family, and this is a business. And I said I would never again talk about this topic. And lots of people have asked me about it. Like I tell you, I'm a player. And if a team picks me up or if they do something, it's because they need it, obviously. And I'll be happy to help any team. Right now, I'm just focused on trying to help my team get out of this bad streak. The timing of this isn't great because, for those who know, Anthony Rizzo, currently out for up to 8 weeks with an arm injury at this point, happens to play first base for the Yankees. And that is the glaring weak spot for a Yankees roster who have shown they don't care what the price is. They'll go out there and kind of pay it, whether it's prospects or mega contracts or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
acquire and finally snap their precariously long, at least for Yankee standards, World Series drought at this point here. 15
Yeah.
years, last one in 2009. So this is an interesting time to all of a sudden be walking back the I will never play for them, not even if I'm dead. What were your thoughts when this sort of came to light?
I mean, it's interesting because those are very harsh words to use to describe a situation. So, I mean, this is professional sports. You never want to rule out anything. You never want to close any doors. You never want to burn any bridges because you never know when it's going to be that one team that's the only team interested in you to offer you a contract. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. In today's world, people have to be very careful what they say in the media because it gets overblown. Let's be honest. Now, to where he is in his career, I think he realizes that he's not really playing to the level that he's expected to play at. Right? He kind of set a precedent for himself. I want to say 4 years ago. When he started hitting, over 30 home runs a season, he started, batting in over 100 RBIs every year. You've seen some regression the last couple of years, whether that's either weight related, whether that's focus related, whether that's, he can't hit the ball when there's men on base. There's a number of different reasons why people are getting frustrated with Vladimir Guerrero. Where did this Gold Glove defense go? I mean, he's not the same defender he was a couple of years ago. So this is a situation where, as a Blue Jays fan, you're looking at it like, do we want to, walk on eggshells here? Because really, he has that potential to be, that 50 home run, 140 RBI guy. But it's Toronto, right? The Toronto media, as you know, aren't exactly the most friendly of folk. And if you're not performing to the level that you're expected to perform at, they get on you very quickly. Now, not to say that New York is any better, because, to be honest, New York is probably the worst media market to be in if you're not performing. The best media market to be in if you are performing. So, again, we look at what we talked about with the Boston-Ottawa trade. Anything that you look at interdivision obviously has a lot more, interest in it, because you have to play against this person for a lot more, games than you would if you traded them outside of your division. Mm-hmm. So I mean, if Vladimir Guerrero ends up, being traded, or at the end of his contract ends up saying, you know what, I don't want to come back to Toronto because of the way I've been treated, or I don't think that their management's invested in winning. I'm going to go somewhere like the Yankees, who just coincidentally will offer him the highest contract probably out of everybody outside of the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So yeah, in a professional sports world where your career could end at any moment, you have to cash in whenever you can, and keeping all the lines in the water are going to catch you more fish. And if you remove any of those lines, you're not doing yourself any favor. So whether he believes it or not, whether he doesn't want to go to the Yankees or not, probably better for him to backtrack a little bit on those statements, so that way he kind of keeps every option open in regards to, hey, my next team could be my last. Let's try and maximize this contract. Because I guarantee Dad took him aside and said, hey, son, I didn't want to play for the Baltimore Orioles, right? Well, guess what? They were the only team offering me the contract that I wanted at the time. And that's where I had to finish my career. So it sucks. You don't want to do it. But if they're going to give you the amount of money that you're hoping to get, you'll change your tune pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's just it, right? I would be very, very shocked to see Vladdy Jr. in pinstripes this season, because it's essentially an admission of complete failure on the Blue Jays
Yeah.
front. You've just dumped all of this money into the renovations to finally bring your ballpark up to snuff here. And now you're going to trade away pretty much the face of your franchise here to
Yeah.
a division rival who's going to have to come and play you multiple times in said venue, and probably is going to absolutely obliterate the baseball out of there because he's going to enter it with a chip on his shoulder as well too. So it's not a recipe for success if he does get traded at all. I think you're in for an absolute tear down, complete organizational reset, to the point where this team might be struggling to win 50 games next season. Like, talk about Bichette is gone, Vladdy is gone. If someone wants to roll the dice on the corpse of George Springer at this point for kind of a veteran bat off the bench, for a playoff run, go ahead. Like, there's not too many people that are going to be untouchable at that point. But it's something that ownership is going to need to have to take a look at, because right now, coaching isn't getting it done. The front office decisions aren't getting it done. So it's not just a roster reset. It is a complete and utter TNT to every floor of the building, blow this thing up and reduce it to rubble, because it is going to be a long rebuild. And, talk to a Pirates fan, talk to a Reds fan. There were a lot of lean years that they had to suffer through, and before they finally got, to the point where they're excited about, the Paul Skeens and the Ellie De La Cruzes of the world. But that's essentially what you're looking at, because at one point, Bo Bichette and Vladdy were those exciting all-world prospects, and they're going to get us to the promised land. And clearly, whether it's, internal or external factors, they're not living up to what a lot of fans expected out of them at this stage of their careers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything else needs to be said on that matter. I mean, obviously, still, a lot of games left. We'll see where things go. But yeah, I think that this offseason is going to be a very important one if things keep going the way that they're going, because there's going to be a lot of difficult decisions that are being made from the top level to the roster.
Yeah. That's the problem with baseball. It's not just 17 games, right? 162 of them. So we've got plenty more time to dissect the good old Toronto Blue Jays this year.
Yeah, absolutely.